What up? What up? Congrats to the girls volleyball team who just beat Whitney Young to advance to the sectional finals. Mr. Dowdy will be attending on Thursday night, so we might not have any screencastitos that night. I don't know. I will say this: I posted a video from last year where I projected this, and you can see me in the video on redistricting. So you can watch that one if you prefer it in this format. Then you can watch this one, but I would certainly watch one of the two. So let's get started. How do you play? Oh, present. Stupid Google Slides. I wish it was still PowerPoint. I'm used to that. And when I changed it to Google Slides, it screwed everything up, which was very annoying. So, redistricting, reapportionment, gerrymandering, all those concepts mean the same thing. Every 10 years, the United States Census, which falls under the executive branch, counts the number of Americans in the United States. And when they count them, they base it on a variety of factors, and they base it on race, demographics, if you will, race, gender, household income, etc. But more importantly, they see whether or not individual shifts in population have been significant. So if you're a state or from the South specifically that has gained a tremendous amount of population, and maybe you're a state who has lost population, you may gain or lose a seat in Congress, specifically the House of Representatives. The Senate does not go through this process because senators represent an entire state, not a smaller district. Obviously, this plays a role in regards to the Electoral College because your Electoral College votes can increase or decrease. And we'll get back to that in a bit in regards to the state of Illinois. Is it in the Constitution? Yes. Representatives shall be apportioned among the several states according to the respective numbers. So think of apportioned as you're taking a portion of the House of Representatives, the seats, and you're giving it to each state. And that is determined on population. The greater the population, the more members of Congress you have. And it says at the bottom here, every subsequent term of 10 years. So every 10 years, you're going to recount the population of every state and determine whether or not you kind of move around a few members or seats in the House of Representatives. Again, in the majority of states, I mentioned this in some classes earlier today who brought this up, the state legislatures are responsible for drawing the districts. Again, reapportionment is just moving around the number of seats. Okay. Some states redistrict. You redistrict only if you've increased or decreased members in the House of Representatives. So if you're a state that kept the same number of House of Representative membership, then you do not need to go through the process of redistricting. Redistricting is redrawing. Redrawing of the congressional lines. And again, in most states, federalism, every state is different, but in most states, whoever controls the state legislature controls the process of determining the lines in your state. And we'll get into that a little bit later. So again, this shows prior to 2010 what was predicted to be the changes. And you'll see in the South, a lot of increase, or a lot of states had increases in the members of House of Representatives, Louisiana being the one that was predicted to decrease. And a lot of those gains in the South were at the expense of the East Coast and the Midwest especially. See Ohio losing 2 seats. Significant? Yes, your influence in Congress could go down. But you see here, a lot of this is immigration. A lot of immigration from Mexico and South America is to the South, and a lot of it is from retirees, the baby boomer generation retiring. A lot of old people retiring, and old people tend to go south. They want the warm weather. We are not replacing the amount of people who are retiring at the same level with babies. We're not Individuals don't have as many kids typically as they used to back in the day. Individuals wait until later in their lives to have kids, whereas back in the day you might start having kids at 18 years old. So times have changed a lot, and so we're not increasing the population at the same rate as old people retiring and moving. So people are moving at a greater rate of being replaced with babies in the Midwest. That's an interesting discussion. Now, this map here shows in each state who controls the process of redrawing if you redraw. And you see that many states are controlled by Republican state legislatures. So we're talking about the state legislature who controls the redrawing. The red states, all controlled by Republicans. The blue states, by Democrats. So with the state of Illinois, when we lost one seat after the 2010 census, the state Democrats, not Democratic members of the House of Representatives or Senate, but the state General Assembly in Springfield, Illinois, they got to determine the new lines. And you see that Nebraska, remember Nebraska, how unique they are? They, of course, have to be special again. And they have a nonpartisan commission that will draw those lines. They probably take like 10 Republicans and 10 Democrats, so it's essentially nonpartisan. You see that Illinois has lost seats consistently over the last century. So in 1910, we had 27 seats in the House. Now we have 18. So we consistently have lost population and therefore have consistently lost not only membership in the House of Representatives, but influence in the Electoral College. You're talking about 9 members in 100 years. That's significant clout that you lose in Congress. And how is that formulated? Well, basically, you get a representative for every 714,000 people in every state. So some states only get one. I think Wyoming, maybe, it's a population about a little under 700. So they get one. So the rules when redistricting. And again, gerrymandering is drawing the lines to benefit by party. And I think we'll get to that later in this presentation. But one of the things is one man, one vote. This is a concept that every district must have the same general population. So if we go back approximately 700, a little over 700,000 people in every district. So one district can't represent 1,000 people and another 1 million people. There has to be similar population in every particular district. One man, one vote was established by the courts in Baker versus Carr. If you remember this, I believe it was in the last unit. Baker v. Carr establishes one man, one vote. And it's in quotes because that was in the decision. That every person's representation in Congress must be approximately equal. One member of Congress can't have more power than another. How do you remember Baker v. Carr? A baker's dozen. What is a baker's dozen with donuts? It means one extra donut. You probably never heard that before. It's called a baker's dozen. You get 13 instead of 12. One extra. One extra donut, one man. I don't know. Maybe that helps. I don't know. Baker v. Carr, one man, one vote. Redistricting. And one of the horrible things about Google Slides is all my graphics are all screwed up. But redistricting is, there is one specific rule in regards to race. You cannot crack a population or a demographic of people to dilute their influence in Congress. So think of the pink dots. This is one, we'll say one state. Let's say the pink dots are Hispanic voters, and the green dots are Caucasian voters. If we tried to limit the influence of Hispanic voters and drew the lines based, well, it's a little askew. But if you see here, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 green, 1, 2, 3, 4 pink. This would lean Caucasian. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 green, 4. All of them are 5 to 4 green dots to pink dots, meaning every single district, 1, 2, 3, and 4, would be, in theory, an advantage for a Caucasian member of Congress being elected. This is illegal. You cannot dilute the influence of a particular racial group, whatever race that is. So you can't purposely draw the lines to dilute the influence of a particular racial group. That's called cracking. You're trying to crack the influence, break them up so that their influence is diluted. What is allowed is packing, and I apologize for this graphic. If you look at the other video, it's a PowerPoint and much clearer. You can draw the line so that there is influence in Congress for a particular racial group. So this is supposed to be over a little bit. If you pack a minority interest into one district so they get an elected official, that is okay. You are protecting, the courts have said, a community of interest, in this case based upon race. So in this case, it's very likely that a Hispanic member of Congress will be elected and represent that area. That's okay. You're not trying to decrease the influence, you're trying to increase the influence of a particular racial group. The courts generally have said, if you pack a racial minority into one district so they have representation, that is okay. Finally, the courts have ruled that race cannot be the sole or only reason for redistricting. However, it can be a key factor. How do you prove that? I don't know. But it cannot be the only or sole reason for redistricting. The districts must be contiguous, meaning the lines must be connected. You cannot have a district like this where this is all one district and a little island out here. Lines must be connected. Districts must be relatively compact, so they must not meander through the entire state, although one would argue the 17th district in Illinois is meandering all over the place. But generally speaking, they must be relatively compact, although the courts have not been very explicit in what that means. Funky districts, Dom districts, that was a student from last year because he was a pretty funky kid. We'll look at some of those in greater detail on a website in a second. The end result, well, gerrymandering is used to protect incumbents. So you are trying to protect your own interests. And a good example is, this isn't at the national level, but this is at the state level, but it's the same concept. In 2000, Barack Obama was a rookie running for the General Assembly in Illinois. And he was running against an incumbent in 2000. And he gave a little bit of a scare to that incumbent. After the 2000 census, they redrew lines in the state of Illinois' General Assembly for legislative districts. They redrew Barack Obama's house out of the incumbent's district. So now, even if Barack Obama wanted to run against that guy again, he couldn't. He was redrawn out of the district. So in 2002, they just redrew the lines and Barack Obama's house is no longer in the district. You can't run against me. Why is Barack Obama laughing?
Every state assemblyman believes he or she is going to be a state senator and soon will be in Congress and then will be senator and then will be president. It's inevitable for each and every one of them. So we have thousands and thousands of future presidents running around. Barack Obama is quite fascinating in this regard. He first runs for Congress from a solidly black neighborhood and gets defeated, gets walloped by a black incumbent.
So in 2000, if you're voting for Congress and you live 2 blocks away from the Obamas, you can vote for then State Senator Obama if you wish. Come 2002, you can no longer vote for Obama. Barack Obama's been removed from the district.
Obama then does something very interesting. His backers, the people who think that he has a future, redistrict his seat in a way that gives him a heavily white liberal constituency.
One day in the spring of 2001, he sat down at a computer with sophisticated mapping software and began the process of redrawing his own district. And that redistricting really was a huge turning point in Obama's political career.
So, if you will, and I was wrong, I guess he wasn't a huge threat to that incumbent, but he was able to redraw his district. So, his district included a lot of the very affluent, very liberal areas of the city of Chicago, which allowed him to represent people who had a tremendous amount of money. So, he's smiling all the way to the bank because he was able to get individuals to support him who had a lot of money and were able to raise a tremendous amount of campaign dollars for him. So it can be done in a very political way. Typically, for a congressional standpoint, you redraw the lines to get voters in your district who support you. So if you look at this map, this is what your district used to be. It used to be in the 6th district, 6th congressional district. Peter Roscom, prior to 2012 election, represented you in Congress. What happened is the Democrats redrew the lines. Why? Because we lost one seat. So in our state, we had to redistrict after the 2010 census. And what happened, these maps are not the same, not covering the same area, because now what happened is the Democrats took, this is the northwest side of Chicago, there's O'Hare, which is over here, or I guess over in this area. But they took O'Hare, or excuse me, a huge swatch of Chicago, extremely liberal Chicago, and they hooked Elmhurst, Oak Brook, part of Hinsdale onto that district. So you took an area over here that is highly Republican, but you've attached it to an area that's so much bigger that is highly Democratic. You've diluted the influence of Republican voters in DuPage County, or a portion, a slice of DuPage County. Perfectly legal. Gerrymandering is drawing the lines to benefit a party, and the courts have said that that's okay. One last website-ito, if I can find it. If you look at some of the most gerrymandered districts in the United States, you can see that they're drawn for a reason. We don't know exactly what the reason is. I would reason this is getting a whole bunch of cities. You see some of these big cities, which tend to be liberal bastions. This might also be drawn to benefit an African-American candidate. As we know, cities tend to have a higher population of African-Americans, urban areas. Florida, clearly drawn for a reason. And literally, you have computer programs that will draw these. It will break it down by demographics, rich, minority, young, old, and they will make it so that you get, even by party, you will get individuals in your district who tend to support you. I mean, come on. What is this? It gets worse. All of these districts drawn to benefit. I mean, look at this district. Goes down, still connected, narrowly into there. It's crazy. It's crazy. And that's Illinois' 17th district. Florida's all down the coast. Got to be a reason. And let's get down to Illinois' 4th district. This district here, again, is an example of packing. You're packing Hispanic voters into one district, the 4th district, so that they have representation. So this is the north and northwest side of Chicago, which has a high population of Puerto Rican voters. And then it meanders through Stone Park, goes up to 294, literally down 294, meanders over through Bridgeview, and then gets Cicero in the southwest side of Chicago, which has a high population of Mexican Americans. So you take two Hispanic demographics and you combine them, and you will have Hispanic representation in Congress. Perfectly legal. And your representative, or not yours, but the representative for the 4th congressional district is Luis Gutierrez. And clearly, this is drawn for a reason. But it does, and some would say a positive, it gives Hispanic representation in Congress, whereas in the past, maybe these districts were drawn in a way in which they would not have representation. So some would argue this is not necessarily a bad thing. Peace.